I was like, haha, I'm not like those junkies. A lot of people got arrested for indecent exposure. Everyone just peed between houses. I don't know why. I woke up with a 12-year-old Chinese boy at the head of my bed. That's what Johnny Depp wore in Pirates of the Caribbean. So I'm going to county jail with eye makeup for however long, I don't know. And I was like, what the fuck am I here with all these degenerate, like these idiots?
Welcome to The Recovery Idiot. Please like and subscribe, and don't forget to visit therecoveryidiot.com. Shop at the store and support your local recovery idiot. Please follow us on all the social medias, even if we're too afraid to post. The following contains explicit language and situations that some might find unsettling. Viewer discretion is advised.
It was like last week. I was in the courtroom next door. It's crazy. So some inmate...
And video shows the moment the sheriff says that inmate spat at the judge.
I mean, he's shackled up and he does like the whole like hobble like right into the podium and like down on the ground, and all the sheriffs are all over him. But he tried to like lunge at Judge Roby, which like Judge Roby is the largest man in the world. He's like 6'5". He's probably 280 pounds. Like, he is a big fucking dude. And he always has 3 guns on him. Like, and because I know that because I went to Sailor's Return with him at lunch. He has a concealed weapon license, a concealed carry, that has no expiration date. That was back when you needed them. We were at lunch, and he's like, yep, and he like pulled out a revolver, and then he also had a bigger one, and then he also had one in his back, and he's like, so he's strapped all the time in the courthouse, all the time, and in life, just walking around with 3 guns.
I mean, I don't blame him, considering people have been trying to kill everybody.
Deputies quickly took control of McCullough and carried him out of court.
Maybe he likes jail.
Yeah, he must like the 3 hots in a cot.
From someone you may have seen. He's doing 20 years now in federal prison. Oh. And the funny thing is...
I don't know him.
He just got locked up like a couple months ago. They gave him 20 years, and when he gets out, he's got 3 years of probation.
Whoa.
I've never heard anyone getting screwed that bad. Like, give you 23 years then. Like, why 3 years on probation? So he's got to live to be 73.
So if they let him out after 85% of the time, they put him on 3 years of probation. If he fucks up at all, they're going to send him back in for the duration.
He's already doing it all. There's no possibility of doing the 85%.
Oh, that's awesome.
There's no early release.
So if he screws up on probation, it's felony probation. I guess they could
federal. Who the fuck knows what happens when you violate federal probation?
Because if they just send him back, they give him a misdemeanor sentence for like 364 days on a VOP after spending 20 years in prison.
We did the
math. That would suck, because in prison after 20 years, like, aren't you like Brooks, where you have like a crow and all the shit's going for you and things are great, and then you get on the outside, but then like you have to go to Martin County and you wouldn't know anyone and you're just an old person in Martin County.
And you're bagging groceries, and then you get a hotel room and you hang yourself. What was his name?
Institutionalization's a bitch. Actually, his name is Brooks. Was an actor played by James Whitmore, who I'm named after. That's actually my name. It's James Whitmore Popa.
That is amazing. I had no plans on connecting those dots. Every time I make an introduction, and it sucks, and then I do an introduction at the end. So we'll see what happens. I have notes. You've seen me have notes before. Ask questions, and then I'll try to steer you in the right direction.
So what you're doing when you like lean forward and do your like, resting bitch face?
Me?
With the camera, where you're like look down. You're not like deep in thought. You're just looking at your notes.
Yeah, I don't know. I always have a resting bitch face. Awesome. So who knows?
Let's go. All right.
You have been over to the Section 9 studios before.
It didn't look like this.
It was less professional than it is now. We were actually in my bedroom, and...
You can't just leave that one hanging.
Well, I'm thinking, because the microphones were so cheap, I didn't even use the same program to edit things. Feels like a lifetime ago. You had discussed a lot of things that are too smart for most of the people watching. And the truth is, we want to know where James came from.
Well, that's not very effective. I said stuff that people didn't get. That's why I like Kevin's stuff. I get Kevin's stuff.
Well, that's the thing. Kevin described his life story. And we all know James, but we don't know where he came from or what he went through.
That's come to a meeting.
That's the stuff we want to hear.
My name is James, and I'm an alcoholic. I was born on October 3rd, 1980.
What's your social security number?
Right. Well, none of that do any good. My credit sucks, I think. I was born in Columbus, Ohio. I was born to an awesome family, upper middle class, I think. I had a lot of friends, had a lot more money, and then I had some friends that didn't. And I had parents that were really, really good. They married very young, and I was the first kid. They did an amazing job. I don't even want to say they did their best. Like they always did their best, but like the best sounds like that's demeaning. But it's not. It was fantastic. I had no idea. If we didn't have money, I had no concept of that. My dad worked full time. My mom worked sometimes. She was a preschool teacher. My dad did a lot of different things, but he ran golf tournaments mostly. So that was that. And there's nothing like super traumatic or like my parents weren't there, so I was running around the neighborhood like causing hell.
Well, that's the point. People think of alcoholics and drug addicts, and they all came from crackhead moms and orphans, and some people come from good families, like me. Not as good as your family, but technically on paper, my family was good. It wasn't their fault I became this.
Right, well, and I think that's why I kind of preface it into that. There are some people that have that, like, my dad beat me with a belt and then, like, put nails under my nails and, like, sort of stuff that I don't have any of that. Like, I don't have a cause there rooted deep in my childhood. My childhood was great. My parents are really awesome, and they loved me to a fault. What developed within me and was that uncomfortability within myself that, like, just that's what ended up spiraling and creating the beast that raised the earth around it. Like, that was all me. It was all something that was created. It wasn't fostered through, like, a poor upbringing. I have two younger sisters who are awesome. They are not like me in that sense.
They don't need to go to meetings.
They don't need to go to meetings. But they're very supportive, and they're also love me to a fault. So I guess I do have that thing in common with a lot of, that's a common, thread through a lot of alcoholic stories, that those of us whose family members didn't regularly beat us, loved us, and like they loved us to a fault. So like that carried me throughout a long period of my life of drinking and spiraling. So
Well, before you get to that, do you remember the first thing you did, the first drug, the first alcohol? Do you remember when it started and what was it?
No. I don't. I just remember at some point people's parents started supervising us less, my friends and I. We just started hanging out at their houses a little bit more. We started playing video games late into the night and like eating junk food and stuff until 3 o'clock in the morning because the parents weren't there. They went to sleep at 7 or they didn't care. The lack of supervision was kind of where anything and all of that began. Someone's parents' liquor cabinet was open, or we started working jobs where I had a job since I was 14 years old, bagging groceries, and then I started working in restaurants. And when you work in restaurants, you work with older people, and you work with older people that they don't have like moral dilemmas with buying on kids alcohol. Then alcohol enters the scene of a group of kids that are unsupervised, hanging out at night, that are some of us like me that are always uncomfortable and didn't handle like social situations super well. Alcohol lubricated that. And then all of a sudden, when I was the guy, my coworkers would buy me alcohol to bring to the people's houses. Everyone started wanting to invite me over, right? So without me knowing it, like that was, I didn't even need the beer commercials because they were coming true. Like, oh my gosh, these like people didn't want to be around me. But also, I didn't start drinking then, really, or using drugs because I was a sober driver for people too. It was a really weird dynamic. I really didn't have an interest in getting drunk.
You provided the alcohol and people came and partied and then you drove them?
Yeah, or I would be like sober enough to deal with whatever catastrophe was going on. Like if everyone's getting really wasted and lighting off fireworks and blowing things up in the backyard, when something caught on fire, I was the one that was like, oh shit, put it out with a fire extinguisher before they called the police or something like that. Because like everyone else would be, pounding Natty Lights or drinking their mom's wine, and like I would have maybe a Zima just to like have something around or like be a part of the club. But like I wasn't really interested in it because then I couldn't function. I couldn't like do stuff. And then also my friends were all idiots. So like when things did blow up and catch on fire, get out of control, or cars ran out of gas in bad places, I had some level of responsibility. So like that's where alcohol and drugs like started into my life. And then it's high school and it's in a fairly sheltered white bubble suburb. So like everyone had access to things, but nothing dangerous.
Like pills and weed and stuff?
Yeah, everyone's parents had tons of pills, but like nobody really knew what they did, and that was kind of scary.
No, that was awesome when you didn't know what they were.
I know. I just don't remember that being as big of a deal as...
The pill scene back then, it really was a chosen few that knew what they were. I was able to get all the pills because no one else wanted them. And every party I went to the parents' medicine cabinet, stole their stuff, but it also wasn't, I didn't eat 20 of them. I would take one, and that would be good for that night. Yeah, it was the parents' fault.
But it's funny because you talk about kids that did that. You don't have like a consciousness of consequences yet, but you discover an accessibility option, which is like I'm spending the night at Aaron's house, and Aaron's mom is way into like Valium and Xanax and has like bottles of shit, and that's what they'd rather do, or they want, or that's the accessibility. Then they're like, wait, we know Chad who lives next to Aaron and his mom and blah blah blah, whatever. But like those people though, I think my group of friends kind of stopped hanging out with as much, or they started hanging out with different people that were kind of more into that world, because then you're dealing with like stealing, robbing, and like all that. We weren't really interested in that. We were really interested in like more of like self-contained intoxication. So I don't remember my first drink. I don't remember my first drugs because there was no like profound experience of any of that.
There was no I have arrived moment in a Home Depot parking lot?
No. I didn't walk through the doors and the air conditioning blew on me like you. I think that was
It was the heat. But
that's right.
When you went to school, didn't you go to special classes? I thought you went to some special class because you were...
No, those weren't special. Those were special classes, but they weren't like what you're saying. I was part of like an integrated program where like
I swore that you said you went to special classes because your parents told you were so smart, but it turned out they were like special ed classes.
Yeah, that's what. All right, yeah, I know that one. I know what you're talking about. God, I hate telling that story.
Yo, please, that's what we need. That's the stuff. That's the adventure people want to hear about.
Right. So, okay, here's what that, and I actually talked to my parents afterwards about it because it took me a while to figure that out. So what you're talking about is when I was in high school, there was an informal program, there's a contemporary program, which are two different styles of learning because they realized that one structured style of learning was not good for everyone. Surprise. But so they tried to like divide everyone. It didn't really work out the way that they wanted it to. Part of that program too was they also had like not special needs people, like they had their own like special needs track, which are people with actual disabilities and handicaps, but they had the people with like severe ADHD, the people that like couldn't, the kids that couldn't take tests without being on their own, and like they didn't really have an integrated program to know what to do with them besides put them in their own classes. So you had like the two normal structures, then you had like the kids who weren't succeeding in normal school very well, and like they were the ones that in those classes or socially weren't adapting very well, the problem people that were going to be falling through the cracks. Then they had
special needs,
right?
So this was like special needs light.
Well, yeah, I was doing really well, but I wasn't like acclimating to either program. I think I had some of the contemporary classes and some of the informal classes, but I was reading like at a better level. I was testing very well, but I wasn't mixing in with either of them. Neither of those was a good fit for me. So like for 2 hours a day, I was put into these other classes with those people, with a group of like 4 other people that were kind of a little bit like me, where like we didn't necessarily have any learning disabilities, but they were integrating us in with the learning disability kids to broaden that spectrum. I don't know if that really makes sense.
Well, spectrum's a key word. I think
well, for whatever reason, my deficiencies made it necessary for them to find a different place for me. And so I'm not saying that like I was this smart kid they were bringing in to like help bring the other kids up. I had my own deficiencies that weren't really working well. So like I found myself in these other classes, which made me really pissed off. And like, because then I was like, what the fuck am I here with all these degenerate, like these idiots?
The kids that were smoking cigarettes?
Yes,
the kids that...
Yes, the kids that were already wearing trench coats and like smoking cigarettes and whose parents were never around, and like they just transferred in from New Jersey or some bullshit. They thought they were hard asses and like they weren't fitting in anywhere else either. And like, so, but I lived there my whole life. I'm like, fuck am I being thrown in with these assholes? They basically sold it to me and I think my parents. We don't know what else to do with them, but it'll be good for him. It was sold to me like it was AP classes, but it was not. And I never got any grades in any of those classes, which is bullshit, because then in my high school career, they look at your entire transcript when we applied to college, and like there's these blank marks in mine, like not even pass fails. It's just like I took that class and like I was there. I don't know. It's not that great of a story. But I asked my parents about it later, and they're like, "We don't want to talk about it." Like, I knew it.
They were putting you in the special classes.
I think so. I don't have any other explanation for it, because academically I shouldn't have necessarily been there. I don't necessarily think I had a learning disability. I for sure had an attention problem.
Well, yeah,
but
so
like,
did I.
No medication or anything.
Once I got to high school, I started failing everything because I didn't focus on the things I should. I started failing English, and I was in drama. So you don't talk about embarrassing things from school. I was in the drama club. I was in the best version of Guys and Dolls that New Jersey has ever produced. But all my grades sucked. But once I got kicked out and I had teachers come to my house my last year, I got all A's. I excelled at everything. And then when I went to night school with those kids that smell like cigarettes and the kids whose parents aren't there and all the special kids, I graduated early because I was so good. Because like once you get me out of that setting of a ton of people, I'm really smart. But yeah, I would have excelled in special needs too.
Well, right. Well, but if you look back, like, I mean, I guess if you're in a traditional classroom setting, and like say they put you at a table with like 4 other kids, don't enjoy being there because you don't like any of them and they don't like you, or you don't get it's not that you don't like each other, you just don't get along with each other. You don't look forward to going to that class or going to school. I can look back now and be like, I think that was in every single one of my classes. Like the school wasn't just putting me at every table with kids I didn't get along with. I didn't get along with anybody. Like I didn't have any friends. So like, where do you put that kid? To me, it was just, that's the same thing, is how do you expect them to focus? Because I guess there's some of those kids that like will, they block out the world that they don't want to see, and then they just concentrate on school. And like, Like, I was not that. I wasn't focusing on school, but then the morning that the homework was due, I was doing it on the way into class and then I'd hand it in. That was like the worst thing of my academic career, is when I could figure out whatever corner I could cut to be able to like do that. So like, I didn't have to do the work when I was supposed to be doing it. I'm not proud of that, but eventually became a very debilitating quality of mine. When you look at the kids that maybe aren't excelling, they're at that table with 4 other kids that maybe they don't get along with, but it doesn't matter which, they don't know that, which table you move. It doesn't matter any table in class. I wasn't going to be around any friends because I didn't have any friends in that class. Their parents were probably like, man, keep that kid away from my kid.
So you're about to be a teenager, or you are a teenager. When you were leaving high school, life was normal.
Well, I don't know. That actually could be the equivalent to first drink, because I applied to different schools. I got into Ohio State. I mean, it didn't really matter where I got into because I ended up choosing a school for the wrong reasons, but some of the right reasons, because I did go to Ohio State for a quarter, and when I went for a quarter, I showed up in these massive lecture halls, and like, it was taught by a TA. One was actually taught by a TV that they wheeled in, and like, the professor was on the TV and they had a slideshow behind him, and they didn't take attendance. And on day one I was like, I'm not going to this. And that's exactly kind of what I did in that first quarter. Is like, my attendance was abysmal, but it wasn't a bad quarter for me, but that was not going to be my college experience. By that time I did have friends, and they went away to different schools, and they were having a college experience that I wanted to have, and I was like, this is bullshit. I'm still living at home. I'm not living in the dorms. I chose a school. I chose the University of Dayton, and it's a private Catholic school. It's like a mini-me Notre Dame, and it's in Dayton, Ohio, and there's nothing in Dayton, Ohio. It's a dead metropolis except for this campus. There's nothing else to do except for exist in the campus. When I went to the University of Dayton, all of a sudden I was confronted with a situation where like, I didn't know anybody. And so I fell back immediately on what I knew. I had somebody buy me like $300 in liquor, hard liquor, and it was an entire, like, that doesn't sound like a lot now, but it was then.
It's like a whole paycheck.
It was an entire, yeah. It was a big deal. It was a huge suitcase. It was its own independent suitcase that I came into the dorms with, and man, it worked like a charm. I was the most popular kid in the entire dorm. Plus, I was coming in mid-year, so everyone knew everyone and had made their friends and their enemies, and I was coming in with like just loot. Basically, it worked very well in the dorm. I became a very popular kid in the dorm very, very quickly. So that was what alcohol was to me. Then I took off because I was living in the barbershop, not getting a haircut. And I was living in the barbershop. I was going to get a haircut. I was getting lots of haircuts all the time. Not only did that get me in with groups of friends, it also got me in with groups of friends that were also the heavy drinkers. And they've got this system at the University of Dayton, which is phenomenal. So you have to live in the dorms your freshman and sophomore year. The campus around that's nothing but student housing. And so there are blocks and blocks and blocks of these houses. Every single night of the week, they're having keg parties. Every night of the week. And the system is, when the juniors and seniors that are buying the kegs, that are having the keg parties, when they were freshmen and sophomores, they didn't pay for beer because they went to the junior and seniors' houses. When they became juniors and seniors, they don't charge for beer. So every keg party is entirely open and completely free. So here's me in the freshman dorm with a ton of liquor that everyone can pregame, and then we go out into it's called the UD ghetto. You go out of the ghetto and you drink, and for free. I never paid for a solo cup. When I went to other colleges and to universities, and they're like, it's $10 a cup. I'm like, you fuck yourself. $10 a cup? Then people come visit me and they're like, this is paradise. House A would have 5 kegs to start the night, right? And as soon as they ran out, it didn't matter because the house next door was the next one that had another 5, and they would tap when the one ran out. Like, it's 24 blocks of housing, and that's just the ghetto. Then there's the dark side, which is even more, and it lives up to its name, but it's like, it's all of those houses. So, and that's every single night, except for Thursday nights. Thursday nights people went to the bars for a little bit. Alcohol was an absolute culture at the University of Dayton. It was awesome. Socially too, like, it worked out for me.
So nothing was a problem yet?
No, big time. But like, I managed it well-ish because the environment catered to that. Like, right, like I said, the city of Dayton is a dead city, so nobody went into the city. The University of Dayton is on the outskirts of it, and it's right between the city of Dayton and this super rich suburb, like exactly like the one I grew up in. So basically, the Dayton police security force just kept people out of the city, or from the city of Dayton out of the campus, and then kept us from going into the suburb. So like, as long as you remain in those, in the playground, they didn't care really what you did, except you can't pee on other houses. A lot of people got arrested for indecent exposure because everyone just peed between houses. I don't know why. Bathrooms didn't cost any money either, but like, nobody used bathrooms in houses. That was a bigger problem than anything else. You have 15 kegs. Everyone could be drinking in the front yard. But like, if somebody was peeing on the side of the house, the cops would walk up to you and fucking arrest you.
You went to 2 colleges?
Yeah.
Did you graduate?
Oh yeah, I did graduate. I graduated with a degree in English literature and almost a minor in philosophy. And I can wipe my ass with both of those. And I was like, I followed a girl out to Chicago. Actually, everyone at the University of Dayton, there's nothing there again at the University of Dayton. So everyone either went home, which it seems like everyone really came from Ohio, Illinois, or Indianapolis. Some people from New York. When you graduate, you leave. Nobody stays there. Nobody gets a job in Dayton and stays. Everyone leaves. Like, I was dating a girl and she lived in Chicago, so I was like, of course I'm gonna move out to the suburbs of Chicago. Really not Chicago proper.
We've discussed this on other episodes.
But you say Chicago, because nobody knows where Naperville is. You're like, Naperville, Illinois. They're like, what?
Yes, everyone just says Chicago.
It's easier that way. When I moved, I was moving for that reason, and then I was going to figure out life after that. And I had this degree. I think I got offered a TA position for like $21,000 a year, and that was before taxes. And I was like, that is insane. Like, no. I went back to restaurants. I started serving in a steakhouse. And I started bartending without any responsibility, basically. So that became like a good place to be a somewhat functioning alcoholic, because I didn't have any responsibilities. Relationship with the girl actually didn't work out, so I was out there by myself. I was very proud that I could like move on my own and be out, and I was sure that I could make friends anywhere. I did this at Dayton. I could make friends anywhere. Of course alcohol's involved. Of course I'm in the bar lifestyle. Of course, like, it's always around me. So like, that was a true bridge point. It would take me years to realize that how lonely that still is, but you accumulate people around you very quickly with drugs and alcohol, and especially if like you're not in school, or if you've been through school with people that instead of going to school, they were doing what you're doing now for the 4 years prior. It was a very carefree lifestyle, and I got a DUI. Out in the sticks of Aurora in Plainfield.
Explain that.
What that is. I was supposed to go meet a girl and her friends out in the middle of Aurora. And if anybody knows Aurora, like, it's between Naperville and the casino boats.
It's where Wayne's World is filmed.
Yeah. And there's really nothing out there. I was so far out in the middle of nowhere, I stopped at a gas station to ask for directions back to 88. They couldn't give me directions back there. And like, you're out in the middle of nowhere when they can't get you back to the interstate. Whoever cretin I was talking to at whatever gas station in the middle of nowhere horror movie. So that didn't pan out that night. I got really pissed. Carried on into the next day, and the next day happened to be Halloween. And then so on Halloween, I dressed up like Johnny Depp from Pirates of the Caribbean. We had to dress for work, but then it was great because after work we were definitely going out, and it was Halloween, so everyone gets dressed up and goes out. But what I decided to do instead was just go to the bar next door with some people and just got obliterated. And then I got in my car and I drove, and I only lived like 3 blocks from there. I ran over a tree pulling into my parking lot, then ran over another tree in front of my apartment, and then got into my apartment. So I dragged the first tree into the second tree. The cops were there very quickly.
So they got you when you were out of the car?
Yeah, in my apartment.
How does that happen?
Well, because I don't know. I came to the door and they asked me some questions which I didn't answer the right way. I remember them bringing me outside and then asking me to sit on the sidewalk or the curb and then put me in handcuffs. And then I was like, well, you better do something about my shoes because I can run faster than you fat fuck. I remember those words because as they were coming in my mouth, I was like, that's right, I'll tell him. Like, to the cop. That was so dumb. And I regretted that immediately because my shoes came off and I've never seen those shoes again. But I definitely went to jail, and I called my parents bawling like a little sissy baby because I was absolutely terrified. And I was in a Naperville holding cell in like a sheriff annex. So like there wasn't any like time or anything. But they kept telling me, we're going to take you to Cook County. I'm like, what? Like, Cook County, you're taking me to Chicago? And they're like, the transport's on its way. I'm like, you better call your parents. I'm like, what the fuck are they doing? Like, I was trying to piece things together, still wasted, calling my parents, drunk as hell.
And you were dressed like...
Oh, yeah. Oh, actually, that was the most terrifying point, is that I was still wearing eyeliner. I didn't have the rest of the costume on, but I still had the face paint on, so I definitely had eye makeup. Because that's what Johnny Depp wore in Pirates of the Caribbean. So, like, I'm going to county jail with eye makeup for however long, I don't know. At least for a couple days until somebody bails me out. That was a terrifying prospect for me because I don't... I've gone through my background. Like, I've never been to jail, and I really didn't frequent contact with people that were regular criminals. So, like, my exposure was like Oz and the Shawshank Redemption. So, like, I didn't want any part of those things, especially with eyeliner. I didn't think that was a good entry. I'd like to say it was humbling. It was certainly an awakening experience.
So what happened? What eventually?
I got to do DUI probation and go to classes.
Did you keep your license?
No, I lost it for 3 months.
That 3 months?
Well, I didn't really learn anything about drinking. I just learned not to drive. And so I didn't drink and drive for a long time, like until I was 30-something. I never drank and drive, which means I just had to find people that would drink and drive for me. That sounds really devious and that sounds really like manipulative, but it might have been a lot of times. But like I was also very self-sufficient because like you have to understand is most of the places that I lived weren't out in the middle of nowhere or small towns. Like when I got to Stewart, like and I was at a bar and I was going to call a cab. They're like, what are you talking about? It's 2:00 in the morning. You're going to wait here till tomorrow. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? They're like, what are you talking about? There's nobody. And I think the one cab service here was like a mom and pop in a minivan. This was before Uber. So like, I was dependent on people. Like I'd go out with people as long as I wasn't driving. But if I went out too, I had no problem leaving my car and coming back and get it the next day, and I would pay for a cab there and back and whatever if I were by myself.
That's a very responsible alcoholic.
Well, but then it also led to just because there were the times that I didn't want to do that or that wasn't an option, so I just drink at home, which also.
Well, that's too far away. There's a chunk in between Stewart and living in Chicago, and I think it involves a Chinese kid somewhere and other college.
Oh, that was when I lived out in Chicago.
This is with the girl?
No, I didn't live with a girl. I was living with another bartender. After undergraduate, but before law school, before I moved to Florida. I lived in an apartment complex community. It was just borderline like Section 8. In fact, I think it did get Section 8 later. But that was the degree of life that we were in. Like that's the money I made and the lifestyle that I had. Like I shouldn't be living in a nice place because I didn't take care of it. We were up late every night, partying all the time. We lived bartender's hours. Like I had people over all the time. So what happened is my roommate was a bartender and he also was a manager at Denny's, and Denny's is open 24 hours. So like he would work sometimes night shifts and we would pass in the night. Like I would be coming home from the bar going into work. Then he would come home in the morning and I would wake up at some point and he would be sleeping all day, so the night shift. So like we oftentimes weren't running into each other. It wasn't unheard of for me to be like in bed and hear stuff out in the living room, then vice versa with him too. I'm sure the hours were different. And I worked in a hotel, so I understood like the lifestyle changes. You like live like a vampire when you work night shift. So anyway, one of the days, like, and I, at this point, like, when you drink repeatedly every single night, there is no other option except for getting out of work and drinking after you get off of work with the people, because you have a couple drinks while you're closing down the bar, and then you have a couple drinks with the people that close the bar, and then all the people that you work with, you all go to whatever bar you all go to. Sometimes they come back to your place too, and then you have more drinks. But you do that every single night. Like, you're always kind of waking up in a state of confusion. I wasn't like blacking out every night. It was just, it was a slow process up to eventually get to work at 5 o'clock in the evening the next day. I woke up because I heard some stuff in the living room, and I had a 2-bedroom apartment with 2 bedrooms in the back and then a living room in the front, and we had a sliding door on the first floor. What I didn't know is that my roommate, he'd just walk out the slider and close the slider behind him, but not lock it every single day. And like apparently he did that most of the time we were living together, but he never told me about it, and like I wouldn't have any reason to know about it. I woke up one day and I like look down at the edge of my bed, and there's this like 3-foot Chinese boy sitting there. I'm like, what the fuck? He like looks at me and he smiles and he like runs out of my bedroom. He's out in the living room and there's like a cup out, and then he like runs out the slider door, and I was like, what do I do with this? Do I chase the kid? Like, do I call the police? So I'm in the living room. I'm trying to figure out how to like process fucked up part of my life, but it's like not dramatic or anything. It's just like, how do I handle this? Do I follow up with someone? Like, is his parents looking for him? Is this a missing kid? Like, or is he like an urchin? Is this like Oliver Twist? I don't know. Anyway, so I'm like having a cup of coffee, and the kid comes back and he asks if he could play with the football. And there's a signed football from the Chicago Bears that my roommate had up on the wall on a shelf, but not in a box or anything. And I was like, what? And I yelled at him, and that scared him, and he ran away. So I walked out and I went over to the office, the front office. Listen, this is not going to sound like, but bear with me. This is what happened. And they're like, oh yeah, we've been having that problem around there. It's Ling Ling and his parent, they're gone for the day. And I was like, what? You guys know this? Like, listen, he's obviously been in my apartment more than I know of, because he's been in there playing with a football in my living room. And they're like, did he come in through the slider? Because we had another resident too. And they're like nodding their head like it's a usual thing. I was like, listen, I woke up with a 12-year-old Chinese boy at the end of my bed. He wasn't surprised about it, but I fucking was. Like, what are you going to do about it? And they're like, nothing. I started locking the slider after that. Does that have to deal with alcohol?
Kind of, because a non-alcoholic normal person usually doesn't get into those type of situations where you have the weird hours, the type of neighborhood where there's kids left alone.
I get it. Yeah. Where like we just live in existence where it's coming and going in your living room, and you don't really care. Because honestly, my roommate came home at whatever time in the morning with people, and they were up drinking and partying. Like, they probably could have come in and murdered me. Like, I had no idea. I was usually sleeping.
Yeah,
But-
like here, there's some kids that run wild. Sometimes they come through the fence and I see them on the camera and they're asking for some kid to play that doesn't even live here. That's normal. Your house, those kids would have parents in your neighborhood.
No. Well, he had parents. They had a different form of parenting, different parenting style. So at some point in Chicago, I was having a fantastic time and I needed to go to law school. I had been going on fishing trips with my dad to Tampa every single year, and I loved Tampa. I went back to Chicago and I told my roommate and my girlfriend at the time, and I was like, I'm moving to Florida. And they're like, what? Because everyone says they're moving to Florida, especially when they've been on vacation to Florida for a week. And then I was like, nope, I'm doing it. And I like put things in motion on January 1st on New Year's Day, and I had a U-Haul packed up, and so I moved to Tampa. And then, but like, I wasn't going to law school then. I was just that was in always going to happen, but it was in my focus yet. When I went down to Florida, I knew I could bartend, and that's transferable. So like, I got a job at Buffalo Wild Wings in Tampa that had just opened, and like, it was the great new thing because it had just opened. It was the first one there. I was picking up right where I left off in a worse environment, because Florida is not where you go to be an alcoholic. Like, the concept of like 2-for-1s all the time and like happy hours 3-for-1s is insanity. That does not exist anywhere else in the world. It's illegal, actually. Everywhere in Florida, alcohol just flows and is unbelievably acceptable. And not just that, but like, the other people on the street are much more dangerous. The elderly are driving around on whatever cocktails of prescription medication, also drinking 2-for-1s at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, bars on every corner, and liquor stores on every corner. It seemed like nothing ever closed. The Buffalo Wild Wings where I worked was on one side of the county line road. Everything stayed open for another 2 hours. So like, once everything on this line closed, you just go to the other side of the line. It was great. It was awesome. Wasn't very much of an adjustment, but actually that's where I did learn a sense of loneliness. I didn't go through a transition of not knowing people and not having friends, because I made friends very quickly, but they weren't friends. Like, they were just, I accumulated people.
Drinking
So
acquaintances.
Yeah, I always had stuff to do. Drinking was always there. Drugs are huge down here too, which is always a joke that people come to South Florida for recovery, because like, it is just...
I've been to a lot of
Bonkers,
cities around the country. It's nothing like the drugs of Florida. It is so easy to get anything you want. And then drugs come out on the market first in Florida. Was the first with bath salts, first with Flocka, first to get fentanyl real big. Like, we're leading the race in drug abuse. There's got to be some fancy word for it.
I moved down right in the middle of the pill mill explosion. Too,
There you
in
go.
South Florida.
That started in Florida.
But I was
too.
over in Tampa. It was all over. I actually had no interest in pills at that point. While it was going on around me, like, every bartender and every server, nobody really, I really wasn't into it. You know, I was like, haha, I'm not like those junkies. I'm just going to drink myself ridiculous, because it's, you know, it's more socially acceptable and it's legal, and I didn't think it was as detrimental. At some point I had to get my shit together, so I went to law school.
What
But, like,
made you decide to go to law school?
I was always going to go to law school. I think at some point in my younger life, I was out with my dad and his friends, and they were like, oh, are you going to run golf tournaments like my dad? I said, yeah. And my dad said, absolutely not. You're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or something where you're going to actually make some goddamn money. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to do that. And then, like, you have to really be smart to be a doctor in ways that I'm not. And lawyer really fit me well because TV lawyers were just very charismatic guy and with money and power.
And they were
like,
always drinking.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, and they never had any problems with it either. So, like, they never saw there's never any darker side of those lawyers. So, like, you know, money, drugs, and power. Oh, well, not drugs, but money, power, and women. There we go. Money, power, and women. To me, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, why would I want to be an auto mechanic? It's not built in, like, money, power, and women, but it is for attorneys. And one of the big parts about law school is you have to understand is that you do have to be smart to get into law school. I think you just have to be demonstratively smart, like, right? You have to have good grades, but the key factor is you have to qualify for $150,000 in loans. The first year of law school is $35,000, at least when I went. So I got a little measly scholarship in financial aid, but part of the scholarship in financial aid is that you had to sign this paperwork saying that you weren't going to work. So I couldn't have a job.
What
So
the hell kind of shit is that?
Yeah, I know, it sucks. So you had to actually take out another like $15,000 to live on while you're at school, to eat and all that other crap. And then once they get you on the loan, they'll keep giving you money for tuition for the next 2 years, and actually during the summer too. So it ends up being about a $200,000 price tag. And then when you're done with it, you have to take a bar exam. So all of a sudden, the 3 years of college that you just took, 3 years of law school, don't mean anything as far as practicing. You don't work during that. So it's 76 days that you study for the bar. During those 76 days, you do nothing but take bar prep classes for 8 hours a day, every day, and then you go and you take a 3-day exam. So you actually have to take out another loan for that. There's another $22,000. So like I'm $230,000 in the hole. But I made a valiant effort to quit drinking entirely. When my first year of law school, I didn't drink for like 120 some days, and it was miserable. I was fucking mad all the time. I tried to do everything in the world to be good. I tried to get into TV shows. I tried to get into hobbies. I tried to get anything, and nothing replaced alcohol. And I was just a miserable, mean fucking dick. And law school sucked. And the first year is terrible. It's awful. And that's what it was. So then, like, after my first year...
That's the most alcoholic thing I've heard you say.
My first year, when that ended, I started drinking again.
It was like being on probation, and now the handcuffs are off. Now you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened. Law students all drink heavily, as do like a lot of lawyers, but like as long as I maintained my studies, I would go to the library and work in the library at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd go to first class, and I'd stay from my first class until 5 o'clock. I was living there basically because I didn't have a job, but I would drink from 5 o'clock until whatever time in the evening. My roommate and I would usually just have some beers and liquor or whatever else and just drink and hang out, watch TV, and play cards. But it was a much more manageable and enjoyable existence. It's still just like fuzzy brain. So I passed the bar, and when you pass the bar, it's awesome then because you can practice law. But then you got to get a job. I didn't want to stay in Orlando, and the firm that I had been working for was dissolving. Like, the lawyers were very successful. They were going their different directions because there were some huge inner office conflicts. Maybe that, or maybe there were a lot of reasons they didn't want to offer me a position as an attorney there. I got offered a job in Stuart, Florida, which I'd never set foot in Stuart, Florida.
Have you ever heard of Stuart, Florida before you moved in?
Never even been on this coast. So I got a job, and basically my job was to make sure that our office didn't burn down. That's all I had to do. I had to show up and do some stuff, and it was a very like frustrating legal existence because that's not what it was. Like, remember my conception of a lawyer was like money, power, and girls. And like now I'm in this small little beach town, and I'm single. It's a very small pond to fish in. There's no nightlife. Everything closed at 10 or 11 o'clock. I didn't know anyone, and I had this job that was not a fulfilling lawyer job. I did not feel like a lawyer, and I didn't have money. They were paying me garbage. I could barely afford a haircut. They didn't have any power at all. I basically just showed up to court, and I was breathing, and the court was happy. Life wasn't what it was supposed to be, but I had alcohol. I definitely did. Moved into a place in downtown Stuart, which was like a frat house. I'm familiar with frat houses. I could acclimate to that very well. I found happiness in alcohol. Again, I was miserable at my job. I wasn't fulfilled in life, and like I didn't have any direction. I always was asking myself, this can't be it. This cannot be where I'm supposed to be. But it was where I was, and I was utterly frustrated, but doing absolutely nothing to change it. Because at any time that I was done with work, the first thing that I thought of was hanging out with my friends and drinking. My few friends that I had here, so that I could forget this is where my life was. Which sounds like pretty dark for living in a small beach town in Florida. Like, cry me a river. All right, so...
No, but that sums up why people become alcoholics, why people drink, because they're not happy with life. And then once you take those first couple sips, you don't care that you're not happy with life. It's the same thing with drugs.
But your sick brain keeps telling you, like, you want to change. Every day I was like, man, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do something. And you just can't. My brain would not let me make different choices, which sucked. And I was trapped in this frustration of life. But life continues to move and grow, and you have different opportunities. I found different ways of living. I was happy-ish, like type happy. It was strange happy, but it was... So if you got the job, like, there's that scene in Fight Club where they're like, what do I do next, Dad? And like, I didn't ask my dad that, but like, what do I do next? It was like, well, I don't know, son, get married. I'm like, okay. I met my wife through my work because you can't meet anybody in a small beach town, and everyone in a small beach town knows everyone anyway. So the only place that I was meeting new people that wasn't at the bar at night, which I had no interest in those people, were through work. And I met my wife, who was an absolutely wonderful person. I started dating her, and we did get along. And I wasn't like this horrific fall down alcoholic. I had redeeming qualities, and also like I was very good at making sure that people only saw the part of me I wanted them to see, which is the best parts of me. And then if anybody did see by accident like a darker side of me, like I would just not associate with them anymore. So spiral further into alcoholism.
My friend who has 10 kids because he said every time he got out of prison, I'm going to settle down, I'm going to get the girl, I'm going to start a family, and then I won't be a miserable drug addict. And he's got 10 kids because it didn't work the first 9 times. Actually, first 8 times because the last kids are twins. But I did the same thing. 2013 when I got out of jail. It's like, everybody, my mom, everybody, they settle down, they get married, married, they're normal. If I do that, everything will be okay. And I met a girl and she had a kid, which is great because now my DNA is not in the fucking world, but I can still play stepdad. Everything will be fine. White picket fence, marriage. Yeah, this is it. I personally got more miserable than I could ever imagine and turned to drugs harder than ever. But what happened to you when you got married? Did life get better?
Life progressed. Like, it wasn't that it got better, life got different. Marriage comes with its own set of problems, but it also its own set of joys and relaxations. There's commitments that are involved that are liberating, but you now are inextricably tangled with this other person's life. It becomes a partnership. And so, like, debilitating flaws like crippling alcoholism show that not just rear their ugly head, but like also become an issue between the two of you, because now it becomes something you need to talk about. Perfect example, when you start losing jobs because you're sick all the time, it's affecting somebody else every single time. You get commentary on your life, whereas normally I'd been going through most of life forgetting about whatever consequences that I had.
You didn't have to answer to anyone when you're coming home by yourself.
Right, and it's not even just answering to somebody like they're an authority figure, it's you're accountable to yourself then, because the other person expects you to be accountable to yourself. They don't have to tell you that, like, you know, it's not normal to piss blood or to cough up blood each morning or to throw up on your way to work, but like I could accept that as long as I'm good when I got to work. But like when somebody else is telling you, like, I'm kind of concerned about that, can you go see a doctor? Not like stop drinking, but like go get yourself checked out because I don't want you to die. And you're like, you're worried too much. Like that's where it comes into play, is really it comes into when you get married, you have another person concerned for your well-being, whereas you are otherwise not.
When you met, she knew you drank, right?
Yes.
But were you ever like sloppy drunk in front of her, or you were just like a functioning alcoholic?
Well, I had years of practice.
So she just thought this was you.
Well, I don't know what she thought. She married me. You know, it got to the point that, you know, where I end up on life support. My body had become so entirely dependent on alcohol that, like, I couldn't function without it. But it's not like I wasn't just having a couple beers in the evening with people. Like, I was drinking lots of vodka just to maintain, and that's a very sad place to be. Oh, and I was actually at a point where like I had very lenient doctors, I guess. When I was like, man, I'm very anxious in the morning and I have the shakes, and they're like, take this Ativan, and I was like, sure, what's that? It's not Xanax though, right? And they're like, no, this will help you with the shakes. I'm like, all right, whatever, and it worked. And then like I'd come back a couple months later and be like, I'm starting to shake again. They're like, take some more Ativan. I'm like, okay, that sounds like a good idea too. Like, I could still drink on this, right? Like, well, no, don't drink in the morning, right? And then where I ended up in life support is I decided that I was going to stop taking Ativan and stop drinking all at the same time, and I seized out in the living room floor of my in-laws' house.
Oh, so you actually got on life support from not drinking, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty fucking wild. It's like if I was on life support because I stopped shooting heroin.
Yeah.
You were trying to do the right thing. It got you on life support.
No, I don't think I was trying to do the right thing. I just didn't have access to Ativan anymore, and I think I ran out of booze. And her parents were really mad at me. So it was just one of those, like, the consequences or the strife was becoming too much then, so I needed to, like, take some heat off. So, like, I was like, all right, I'll sober up for a little bit. But, like, my body was like, no, we're going to the hospital instead. And that sucks.
How long were you on life support?
Well, I don't remember that. Well, so, no, what happened? So I seized out on the floor, and I don't remember what happened after that. So everything I was told after that is kind of secondhand. I do remember sitting in the hallway of the hospital. My sister was there. She asked me to say my name, and I couldn't answer her. I remember looking at her. I know who she was. I knew who my wife was. I knew the people around me, but I couldn't talk. I couldn't say my name. I hadn't, and like my brain wasn't working. Kind of like now, trying to recall things. But I don't have any other memories before that hallway sitting time and after, until like I came to in the 6th floor of Tradition. What apparently had happened is that like the doctors basically took Trina aside, my wife aside, and said, his organs are shutting down and he's probably not going to make it through the night. We're letting you know. I've never really like talked to her about what her response to that was. I can only imagine. I know she called my parents, and I think, and she asked them to come down because I was probably not going to make it through the night. And if I did make it through the night, I probably was going to make it through the next couple of days if things just kept shutting down. And my parents said no. So I talk about that and when I talk to groups and things, because it to me, in retrospection, it's an understanding that I have put the people in my life that love me unconditionally to a point beyond their comprehension of their love for their child. It would have been a relief for them to wake up in the morning and not have to worry about me anymore. That they had accepted that that was going to happen, that that was a consequence, and that there was nothing else that they were going to do. And I, as a father now, and I cannot fathom what that looks like and what that feels like. And that's where I put my parents. And I cannot apologize to them enough for that evening of putting them in that position. But my wife stayed with me at the hospital as much as she could. I think she was there, and I was vicious to her. I was angry, and I was very disoriented. I was like in and out of reality. I was having a hard, like I was watching TV, and like, you know how TBS plays like different movies, and they were playing John Carter, and they play like the same movie 3 times during the day, but like I was going in and out of consciousness throughout the day, or my memories weren't pairing up, and like, so I was like watching different parts of the movie, and I was so confused, and I thought I was time traveling, and that I didn't know what day it was, and like, I don't know, it was a very weird couple of days, and I started, and at some point, like, I don't know what happened, but I started getting better. I had some guy, an old man that came in, and he asked if I wanted to talk about the big book, because, like, surprise, everyone in there knew that I was an alcoholic, right? All the doctors and nurses, like, probably couldn't believe that I was alive, but, like, let alone, like, what are we going to do with this guy and his poor wife that keeps coming in, and, like, he's just horrible and mean to her the whole time, and nobody else will come visit him, because probably they're all just waiting for the inevitable, or, like, thought the inevitable was going to happen. And he had a big book, and I told him he could shove it, and he asked me if he could pray for me, and I said, you do whatever the fuck you want, I can't leave. So he like sat down at the bed and prayed for me, and then he gave me a back scratcher, which was awesome. I was itchy as hell in that hospital, but I was mean to that guy, and then he left, and I never saw him again.
Was it a District 6 back scratcher? Did it have AA stamped on it?
Maybe it did. I don't know. I still don't have it. It's that little plastic, one of those little like plastic ones you get at like baseball games or whatever. Like, it wasn't.
So you've heard me speak. I don't know if you ever heard me say it, but that's kind of what happened to me when I was detoxing in jail and Men in Black was on, and it was TBS, and they kept playing it over and over, and that's why I thought it was real. So yeah, I guess all like benzo detoxing sort of makes people time travel. I'd love to do that again, though. I mean, not the detoxing, the time traveling part, because I seen some amazing shit. I went to some awesome places, and it was.
So you want to do that again?
If I could do it, like, and be able to process what's going on.
I'd love to have that dream again if I could be lucid.
Yeah, it's like being in a dream that if you could kind of control and remember, I'd love to do it again.
I think that's how normal people feel. Wake up, they're like, that was a great dream about flying. I wish I could do it lucid.
This was different than a dream, though. Did you stop drinking when you got out of the hospital?
No. No.
So what happened from between that time and you actually got to the point where you stopped drinking?
I didn't want to drink because I didn't want to end up back in the hospital, and I didn't want to die, and I think it lasted like a week. That desperation wore off pretty quick.
It's funny because the guy came reading the big book, and inside the big book is the story about the guy who's in the hospital.
But that wasn't like a hopeless point. You think it would be. You think it'd be like, God, somebody help me, please, because I cannot help myself. And I wasn't. I was still very much in the point of like, I can still do this myself, but I got it wrong. Like, I just made it. I went wrong, and I should have gone right. I still got this if I just did it a little bit of a different way. Like, all right, look, I'm definitely not going to take any more Ativan because that's what screwed me up.
That's
like,
the problem.
That was the problem. And like, my brain was like, good, he's believing that, like, keep it up, because the life that I went back to when you walked out of the hospital, and this is a very important part of recovery though too, is that like when I got out of the hospital, I went back to the same life that I had been drinking in before, that had all of the enabling points of my circumstance that permitted all of those things. And maybe in like, there's so many parts in life and social constructions that depend on deterrence through shame, and like in addiction you lose your sense of, or the bar gets really low on what you're ashamed of or what you care about. When you stop caring about getting caught, when you stop being embarrassed when like people find your bottles of alcohol that you're hiding, the normal people would just be like, oh God, like I'm very embarrassed by that, and like feel that way, but
I'll never do that again, I'm sorry.
But I was like, fuck, that was a great spot, now I gotta find somewhere else. And like immediately it's like you go to the next spot, and you don't want to have to get to the point where you have to be able to hide things in accessible places, because it can't be more work to get it than it would be to it's such a stupid process, but like it's incredible, because that's kind of the point that I was. Almost dying had no impact whatsoever on me in the long term, except for like I crossed the threshold of into hospitalization world, where like if it's gonna happen, I would need professional help. So like at that point, I think it was like 2 weeks later, I did go to my rehab to a rehab for the first time. Like,
and then you stopped drinking.
Never. No, never. No.
How many rehabs have you been to?
3. 2 for real. No, and then detox a couple of times, 3 times I think, and then but a lot to the hot. My brain adapted to rehab. Gave me the tools. The first round of rehab gave me the tools to know why I shouldn't drink and what being sober was supposed to be, and I just chose not to be sober. Right, I just wasn't going to be like I was before the drink, but eventually I went back to that. It took some months. It took like 9 months or 6 months, I think. 6 months I was sober after a 76-day program. I was sober for about 6 months, and then I started drinking a little bit here and there, a beer here and there, and then that
progression.
Yes, progressed very quickly because again, I'm already at that point in my life where I'm surrounded by people that I love and care about and respect, and don't absolutely have no shame in hiding alcohol from them. Right now, I just don't want to get caught as much. But if they catch me, it's like, surprise, because they all knew, they know me well enough, just like my parents do, that if I show up intoxicated, they know the difference in me. And then you don't care about fooling people either. So then you play the game of he's drunk, but he's not drinking in front of us. I guess that's okay. Most people will avoid
confrontation.
Yeah, I think that I think what people miss a lot of times is when I look back at when people confronted me on my drinking and my problem, my alcoholism, I never considered what an unbelievably uncomfortable position that put them in, what circumstances led to pushing them to that. Because nobody walks around being like, man, I get to go talk to James about his drinking problem tonight. I can't wait to get off of work. No, man, the last thing anybody wants to do when they're dealing with their life and getting off of work is coming home and talking to you about your problem and how it's killing you. They're probably doing it because of somebody else that they love that's inextricably intertwined in your life or something like that, and it sucks.
Looks like we fucked up. There was a problem with the microphones, and the remaining 10 minutes sounds like a hostage video. We apologize for the sound quality if you continue watching.
I wouldn't have done it for so long. There are a lot of really fun stories, but I don't focus on those. My brain really picks out dark times. But also those are the ones that I'm learning from, I think, the most. And those are the ones that I have to look back on those are the ones that I grow from.
I call it the ex-girlfriend syndrome. You break up with a girl, you broke up with her because things were bad, you had tons of issues, shit obviously sucked because you broke up with her, and then years later you're thinking about her, or she writes you on Facebook, you're like, hey, remember all those good times? Yeah, then you hook back up with her. But the good times was this much, the bad times were this much, and people don't think about that. And then when you think back about drinking, man, remember that fucking party? Or remember how much fun I had when I took Xanax? Oh, remember that? Well, the reason you stopped is because there was 10,000 times more bad problems, but people only remember the good stuff. So it's good to remember the dark times.
Well, but what's weird is I don't actually when I hear other people, when I talk to my friends from undergrad and they talk about them, they tell stories, it is so fun to listen to because I remember them. But those aren't the ones that I go to initially. In the clip show of my, if I go back through my memory clip show of that time, those aren't the ones that in the forefront. The forefront ones are now, for some reason, are the ones that I like. The ones I concentrate on aren't the Kevin stories. Does that make sense? Kevin had a really good podcast about it's super entertaining and very relatable, and I was very there's so many I did that too. I know what he's talking about. I felt that way too, and blah blah blah. But maybe I don't have those ex-girlfriend stories because I never went back. Whenever ex-girlfriends have reached out to me, and not that I have anything special, but I have absolutely no interest. I have zero. Probably because I just remember the bad times, which is really weird. My sick brain is probably just no, that was terrible.
Ugh. But that's good because that's realistic. If more people felt that way, they wouldn't go back.
It certainly makes my resentments more apparent. If you want to talk about recovery, an interesting part about recovery that eventually I got to, what we've done on the podcast, where I ended up in jail and all that stuff for the night and then out in the morning at Blake's house and all that stuff.
Yes, but people can click on that right there and go listen to James get arrested.
That's true. An interesting part about recovery, though, still run into people that they don't understand the program. They don't understand the manner of living that is required, the change that is necessary psychically and psychic change, and then also, but that it takes continual maintenance, right? And it's so much harder to be evangelical, to live the life that you preach and that you purposefully follow. It's so much easier to criticize. To be able to do that in recovery, it takes work, it takes support, it takes help, it takes going to meetings, it takes going to church, it takes praying, for whatever it is. I say going to church because that's part of people's spirituality, but it takes it takes that connection. It takes the part of the program that I stay plugged into. For me, involves going to meetings. So when people are like, you still go to AA meetings? Like, are you having a problem? Like, are you tempted? It's so far from the point, but it's so close. When I have friends that fall out and then they have 5 years sober, or more than 5 years, or a little less than 5 years, and it is only one day away. And it's because they stop going to meetings, because they stop having connections, because they stop growing, and they stop thinking about how they're thinking about things. And in ways in recovery, like an interesting thing that at the beginning of recovery, and when I was in my first 90 days, when I was getting actually 6 months, my 8-month mark where I moved back into my home with my wife, like I was getting a lot of advice from people, really good advice about reacclimating into an old life as a new person. One of the things they told me was, nobody will believe anything that you say at all. And then also when you're sober, they're gonna be like, that's awesome, and pat you on the back. And like, they really want to be behind you being sober, but most people don't believe it because they've seen it before. Like people like me that end up where I did, and like us, it wasn't our first time or first fall. Everyone expects you to at least fall again. They're just used to it.
In the grand scheme of things, with statistics, most people are
statistically we're going to. You're always battling that. You're always battling the statistic. You're always battling your nature. You're always battling the stripes that you're born with. And a good example of that is that the advice that people were giving me when I got out of, or when I was now 8 months sober, I'm trying to, and I'm making amends to people. And that was a big one, is talking to people about making amends. And there are people in your life that you're not just apologizing for something that you did, you're apologizing for the life that you were living. And for you to tell them that you're different and you're changed, and this time it'll be different because of whatever reason you want to come up with, for some reason they don't believe you. I don't know, very odd. Don't waste too much breath, because it's going to take you walking the walk. You have to live your amends to them, whether you like it or not, and it will only come in their time. And those people in your life, like my wife, and like thankfully not my kid because she doesn't remember it, but like my parents, my sisters, my in-laws, the only reason that they believe that I am sober and that I have changed is because I have shown them that I have changed. And to me, here's the mistake that I made. I thought that means that I didn't have to then apologize to them either. If I just lived well enough, then I proved to them, and I, not just, prove that I'm sober, but prove that I'm a good person. That like I help people, I help them. I'm a functioning friend, and hopefully a good friend, and a good son, and a good brother, and a good husband, and a good father, and all of those sorts of things. And by living that life, that it is, for me, I mistakenly believed that was in lieu of apologizing. And I'm realizing now, and it's very apparent to me that is a mistake, because the apology is not just a huge part of my recovery, but it's also necessary for them. Some people don't want you to apologize. I'm pretty sure my father-in-law will never want me to apologize to him, but he's perfectly happy with me being a very good husband to his daughter. But there are people in my life that need me to apologize for them, for not just one thing, for not being a drunk at a wedding, for just people that need me to apologize for who I was and for what I put them through. And that's kind of a part of recovery that I'm needing to deal with today, and that's helping me stay sober. And it's only happening because of the support of my friends, and because of things like this podcast, and because of my sponsor, and and working the program and walking the walk.
Program of action says in the big book, and you can't rest on your laurels, meaning it never ends. And when you stop going to meetings, you stop dealing with your friends, you end up being a wannabe cowboy saying that your son put his Xanax in their drink.
Who's
I said I'd make a different introduction. I wanted to make one that talked about how you're the most successful person that's been on the recovery, which we brought up before. But Derek's pretty successful because he's got a boat and he's got lots of land. So if you two were competing, who'd be more successful? I say you. You have a career, you can go anywhere, you're a lot smarter. And it's fancier to be a lawyer than a successful HV.
I don't know why people think that. Lawyers say stuff and then people do that. The lawyers will call places and say, I want your records, and they're like, okay. And they give up all the records. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why would you do that? Well, I don't know, their lawyer told me. Well, who cares? Like, they're just a lawyer. I don't understand. That prestige thing. Once you're in the club, you see all the people that are in the club, and I promise you, I'm not happy to be a member of the same club as a lot of these people that are lawyers. So maybe I have a very disenchanted view of that. When you talk about success, I achieved being a lawyer while I was drinking, so that has nothing to do with me being successful. All the stuff that I have is not really stuff, because like a lot of the things that I always thought I wanted, that I thought would fulfill me, aren't mine. But I have really cool people in my life that let me use them with them, and then I have the experiences, and those experiences are much more valuable than having the crap. Because usually you have to start like cleaning the crap and maintaining the crap and paying for the crap. I don't know a measurement of success.
Well, my measurement of success isn't real. It's
what you perceive as
Yes.
being successful. So if you're like, man, according to my perception of what it is successful, it's two people that have different things than I have, but like with those things come with very different sets of things. Like, look, man, you could very easily accumulate a lot more stuff if you had dual incomes, but you choose not to get married. So like,
a reason.
You know, certainly having two incomes is a very helpful part of buying stuff.
Yes, especially if you have
And splitting your bills.
If you have a wife who's successful and not a wife that's on Social Security because she's insane. I'm going to pick the one who's been in jail and been in mental institutions.
With us, people that are even in such early recovery, people that have been struggling so much with addiction for such a long period of their lives, like, I feel so close to failure all the time because I know what that tastes like, and I know what that looks like. That familiarity with what failure is, when I don't feel that for me is being successful. So like, that's all I got for every single day.
But that's a good reason not to fuck up. I mean, I remember what jail smells like. That's why I have a collection of jail soaps and shampoos in my room, because I'm one decision away from living there the rest of my life. I hope as I progress and get longer time sober, I never forget that horrible feeling of that last one as it swings in the big book. Like, I don't ever want to hear those doors slam again. I don't ever want to walk in and hear 40 people all screaming at the same time and hearing chow, chow. It's not even food, they call it chow, because I think legally you can't call it food. It's so bad. Don't ever want to do that again. My grandpa was a lawyer. I grew up watching Law and Order. I always wanted to be a lawyer. So to me, that's the most successful thing. You can be fuck doctors.
Like, get your credit score up, qualify for the loans, you can go to law school, you can be a lawyer, be stupid and miserable like the rest of us lawyers.
That's the American dream.
Jake says thank you.
Thank you for watching The Recovery Idiot. Please remember to like and subscribe. Don't forget to visit therecoveryidiot.com, home of the Recovery Idiot store. Please be our internet friend and follow us on all the social medias. In the criminal justice system, the people are represented by two separate yet equally important groups: lawyers that cost lots of money, and public defenders who could give less of a fuck.